We have lots to talk about here in today's video, including all kinds of NHL trade and UFA speculation here for the offseason. The trade market today, we're talking about teams like LA, Ottawa, Dallas, Pittsburgh, and a few others. Plus, in the UFA market, we're taking a look at John Tavares' future in Toronto. Is there some chance he could actually end up on another team and may not agree to a new deal with the Leafs? We'll discuss that possibility. Plus, in the Florida Panthers, when it comes to Sam Bennett and Aaron Ekblad, we'll discuss the latest on their futures as well. All kinds of other news around the league, including the NHL putting out their All-Star Teams and All-Rookie Team. We have a bunch of news from the Canadian Junior Hockey announcing the CHL Awards today. Plus, we have some signings and a small trade as well involving a prospect. And we're going to recap last night's big game in the Stanley Cup Final where the Oilers defeated the Panthers. All that and more coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss here in today's video. Let's start first with recapping the Stanley Cup Final Game 4 that went down last night. It was another very solid, highly entertaining game. It was a back-and-forth action. We now have a 2-2 tied series heading back to Edmonton with best 2 out of 3. I would think that likely favors Edmonton, but based on the odds makers, they still have the Florida Panthers as a slight favorite to go on to win the Stanley Cup. But the gap has been closed tremendously here. Of course, the Oilers had another terrible first period, undisciplined, lots of penalties, mostly stick infractions. The refs, I don't think, had a great game. They did miss numerous penalties, including some stick infractions on the Panthers as well in that first period. They get down 3-0. Florida capitalized on a few of their power plays. Both goals from Matthew Tkachuk early were power play goals, and then a turnover from forecheck on Troy Stecher. I think it was Lundell got the third goal for the Panthers, and just like that, it was 3-0. Looked like it was going to be a rout, but the second period, the Oilers came out. They changed the goalies. Skinner on the bench, Pickard in, and to be honest, it's not on Skinner. I thought he played well. There was a lot of shots, a lot of high volume shots, and even though 3 goals went in, he still made some really big saves on top of that. And if it wasn't for him, it could have been worse, to be honest. The Oilers were not getting to their game. They were not being disciplined, and the Panthers were just winning most of the battle. So it was another really bad start from Edmonton's sake. But the second period, they came out, they more than made up for it. They certainly played a lot better, got to their game. The Panthers then got a few penalties, so the Edmonton was able to take advantage on. The first one was a power play goal from Nugent Hopkins, and they just kept battling, and by the end of the second period, they got the game tied up. So it was a new game going into the third, and then, of course, they got a big goal from Jake Wallman on a slap shot one-timer in close, and got a lead. All of a sudden, the Oilers have scored 4 straight goals. Pickard hasn't let anything in, and it's a completely different game. But then the Panthers, with the goaltender pulled with mere seconds remaining, the puck was bouncing all over the place, which I think benefited them on this particular play. But it was some nice passing, and a bit of a lucky bounce goes to Reinhart, who has an open side, and bam, we have a tie game. I think it was like 19 seconds left, and then it goes to overtime. And the Oilers ended up getting the overtime winner. Leon Draisaitl gets the OT winner, the 4th one of the playoffs, which I believe is a record for most overtime winners in one playoff season. And it was a little bit of a lucky bounce. He tried, with one hand on the stick, tried to get the puck over to Corey Perry. It went off Nico Mikkola and squeaked between Bobrovsky's legs. So lucky bounce. And right before that, Sam Bennett had a grade A opportunity in the slot. I seen the pass coming over, one-time shot. Pickard gets his glove on it, but not enough. It goes off the glove, off the crossbar, and out. Oilers dodged a major bullet on that one. I thought for sure Bennett had the winner on his stick when that play was developing, but all in all, we get a 2-2 series now instead of a 3-1 series. Huge difference. Big momentum swing for Edmonton. Now we're back in Edmonton for Game 5. They don't have the extra day off this time, so it's a shorter turnaround. Game 5 will be tomorrow night, Saturday. So we know the Cup's not coming out there. Somebody's going up 3-2. And then, of course, they'll have the extra couple days. And then Game 6 will be the earliest we see the Stanley Cup afterwards. Or could go back to Edmonton for Game 7. We'll have to see how things go. But certainly a huge win for the Edmonton Oilers. And we'll see what happens from there on game number 5 tomorrow evening. A bunch of other news around the NHL today. We got a bunch of things, including a small trade. We actually had a trade that wasn't expected. It's not a thing too big a deal, but the Chicago Blackhawks have traded the signing rights to defenseman Victor Soderstrom, who at one point was a fairly high first-round pick of the Arizona Coyotes, but he's played in Europe last year, and they still hold his rights, which eventually were moved to Chicago. And in return, they send him to Boston, and in return they get Ryan Mast, who's a pretty big guy. He's a 6'5", 220-pound right shot defenseman who was drafted in the 6th round back in 2021. He's got a couple of years pro now under his belt. Played 37 games in the American Hockey League this year. Certainly, I think a prospect that they think might have a better opportunity to make it in their system. But obviously Victor Soderstrom, I suspect, probably wasn't signing with Chicago. They definitely have a few other defensemen ahead of them on their prospect list here. That's likely going to be kind of cornerstones for them moving forward. I suspect he doesn't see the opportunity there anymore. So we'll see if he gets a chance in Boston or not. Obviously, like I said, not a huge deal. We'll see if Victor Soderstrom becomes a factor in the Bruins down the road. A few signings as well today. The Penguins have re-signed journeyman Boko Imama. Boko, of course, ended up in Pittsburgh last year. He was with Ottawa the year before that. Spent some time in Coyotes and Kings organization since he's been a pro, former St. John Sea Dog during his junior days. But Boko gets another 1-year, 2-way contract, league minimum at the NHL level, as well as a AHL salary of $450,000. He's guaranteed a total to make of $525,000, which is pretty good for a minor leaguer. But he did get a call up at the Penguins last year and actually was on a good stretch. Considering where they're at with their roster, he'll get more of a chance to play, get more NHL time. Ended up getting hurt towards the end of the year, or he would have got more games in. But that's a good raise in his AHL salary. I think he made $350,000 last year, so good bump. Offers some toughness, not a ton of skill, but he's a good skater. He's got good speed, and he's, like I said, he's a tough customer, not willing to do the tough, dirty work and drop the gloves when need be. So good on him to get another contract and stick around in Pittsburgh. We also got a signing as well. In another one in Pittsburgh, where they signed a prospect, Melvin Fernstrom, who gets a 3-year entry-level contract. He was a 2024 third-round draft pick, originally taken by the Vancouver Canucks, but he ended up getting traded to the Penguins in the Marcus Pettersson trade. So, of course, he wasn't signed yet when he was traded, and now he gets his ELC here with the Pittsburgh Penguins. And then the Anaheim Ducks today have signed Lucas Pettersson. He gets a 3-year entry-level contract. Lucas Pettersson was a second-round pick of the Ducks last year in the 2024 NHL draft. Now, as I mentioned, we got some other news today, both in the NHL and in junior hockey. Let's start with the CHL stuff. The CHL announced their awards. Of course, the CHL comprises the 3 Canadian major junior hockey leagues, the OHL, the Western Hockey League, and the Quebec Maritime Junior Hockey League. So these are, basically the full country wide. The top draft prospect award goes to Matthew Schaefer. No huge surprise there. Schaefer expected to be the first pick in this year's 2025 NHL draft. So no huge surprise there, but good on him to win that award. The CHL Rookie of the Year, Landon Dupont from the Western Hockey League. Landon Dupont right now projects to likely be a first overall pick himself in a couple of years' time. One heck of a prospect there. The CHL Defenseman of the Year, Sam Dickinson of the London Knights, the San Jose Sharks, first-round pick from last year. He's had a really, really solid year. Got to play for Canada at the World Juniors and had a big role. London just won the Memorial Cup as well as the OHL Championship. I suspect Sam Dickinson, from what I've seen, looks like he's NHL ready. I'd be quite surprised if he's not in the NHL next season. The CHL Sportsman of the Year award goes to Berkeley Catton of the Western Hockey League as well. Seattle Kraken first rounder from last year. So Berkeley Catton with another solid season too. The CHL Player of the Year, Gavin McKenna. Of course, McKenna expected to be the first overall pick in next year's 2026 NHL draft, and he's likely heading to play college hockey. I don't know if he's announced his decision yet, but I know the odds are that he's heading probably to Penn State as the rumored school he's going to go to, and he'll play U.S. college hockey next year leading into his draft. And then there was also the CHL Top Scorer Award, which goes to another top prospect in this year's draft, which is Michael Misa from the OHL. Misa's likely going to go most likely number 2 behind Schaefer in the draft. And of course, the other one as well, the CHL Brian Kilray Coach of the Year award goes to Moncton Wildcats Coach Gardner McDougall. Of course, Gardner, as you know, you probably heard me talk about him a number of times. He used to coach the university here where I live in Fredericton, New Brunswick. He's a long-time UNB coach, coached there for like 20 years, and was really in university hockey in Canada. Was pretty much broke every record known to that league. And I don't know how many, I can't remember how many championships the UNB won during his tenure there, but it's a big number. Lots of records. Finally made the jump to major junior hockey this year. He got a chance to work with his son with the Moncton Wildcats. His son's the GM. He's the head coach. And they completely turned that team around. Won the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League title. Went to the Memorial Cup. Unfortunately, fell short there. But still, he did tremendous work with that team. They made huge strides just in the first year. So good job, Gardner McDougall. He was already named the Quebec League Coach of the Year, and now he's the CHL Coach of the Year as well. The NHL has also put out some stuff today. Their first and second All-Star teams, as well as their all-rookie team. The first All-Star team is comprised of the following players. In goal, Connor Hellebuck, who won the Hart Trophy and the Vezina. On the blue line, you've got Cale Makar, the Norris Trophy winner, and the runner-up, Zach Werenski. In the forward group, you've got at center, Nathan McKinnon. And the wingers are Kyle Connor and Nikita Kucherov. On NHL second team All-Star, you've got Andrei Vasilevsky in between the pipes, and then the blue line you got Quinn Hughes and Victor Hedman, of course, both very high this year in the Norris Trophy ballot again. At center you've got Leon Draisaitl, and the wingers are David Pasternak and Brandon Hagel. When it comes to the off-season trade speculation and the UFAs, we'll start with the story that broke earlier today that I did do a video earlier this afternoon, and that's Mitch Marner. Andy Strickland put out some information on X stating that his sources are telling him that Mitch Marner will not be re-signing with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And for some people, that's not exactly shocking or breaking news. Obviously, for most NHL reporters that I've been talking about this. So when you look at Elliot Friedman, Dreger, LeBrun, Sarah Valley, Merrick, all the connected people around the NHL, the reporting this stuff, most have said that felt Marner was most likely going to leave. This is the first we've seen somebody with connections say, undisputedly that he's leaving. I guess time will tell. But obviously, I think there's a lot of reasons that leading into this. For one, it sounds like he needs a lifestyle change from what we've heard from behind the scenes. I know that it's not been easy off the ice, and that maybe dealing with his hometown team and all the pressure might not be what he wants to sign up for anymore. I know that, obviously boils down to money. I know from the Leafs side of things, I don't know that they really want him gone 100%. I think if he was willing to give them the right discount, that they'd probably love to have him. But I think from MLSE's perspective and the highest level of ownership, I think the team needs to make changes in order to have a better chance to win the Stanley Cup. And, with him and Tavares being UFAs, this is the better chance to do it. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of these guys have been given high contracts, big money, and lots of protection in their contracts to trade them where they are handcuffed, right? So this is their first opportunity, really, without getting the players involved to work with them, because they don't have to really make change. Unfortunately, like I said, these guys are great players, but they've been given everything. They've been given huge money, huge term, lots of protection, and they haven't delivered. So they need to make changes. So I'm not completely certain that the Leafs absolutely want to sign him, at least for the ticket he's looking for. So, all in all, it's not shocking. I honestly, the general consensus, I know Elliot Friedman said he feels he's going to end up in the West. I agree with that. I think there's going to be a couple teams in the East that do try. I know Jeff Merrick has said a couple of times that he feels that Ottawa is what he would call like a wild card team to watch in a sense for Marner. I don't see that happening at all. I think it'd be really tricky for them from a cap perspective, and really if he doesn't want to play in Toronto, I can't see him wanting to play in Ottawa either. I'd be shocked. He said the owner wants to make a big splash, and yes, he's a newer owner. They want to build the team up to be greater than what they are, of course, but I don't know. I think it's going to be too challenging, and I don't think Marner would want to do that. I can see Carolina in the East being a team that will make a big offer. Otherwise, I can see most of the offers coming from the West, which I think is most likely where he's heading. As I said in that video, I think it's the two main contenders, in my opinion, are Vegas and Los Angeles. Kings or the Golden Knights are the most. If I had to make a bet where he's going, it'd be one of those teams. But I think you're going to see teams like the Ducks, the Sharks, to some degree Utah. I personally put the Avalanche as like a longer shot, if you will. But I know McKinnon is a big fan of Marner, and I know where they lost Rantanen, that obviously they might be having some regrets on not having another star player there. But from a cap perspective, it'd be so hard for them to do that they'd have to move out some big money. That'd be challenging. I don't know if they could pull it off anyway. But those are the main teams I think that are mostly going to be in the mix. But according to Andy Strickland, Marner is not going back to Toronto. So let me know your thoughts on that. If you can also watch the other video, if you haven't already, I do go into a lot more deeper analysis than just what I just said here. Now, speaking of Toronto, though, there is some talk about their former captain and current UFA, John Tavares, and whether or not he sticks around. Now, I think if Marner leaves, that gives them more cap flexibility. So I do think there's a greater chance that Tavares sticks around. But there was comments from Pierre LeBrun I found interesting. LeBrun was saying that he doesn't think it's so much of a slam dunk, so much of a given that Tavares gives them a huge discount. If you take a look at what Tavares did for his production and his numbers this past year, he's got an argument to be made that he's not slowing down to the level that a lot of people thought he was going to. If you look at just from a fair market value perspective, he could easily get $8 million. When you hear a lot of people saying that they're probably going to sign him for around $5 million, and like LeBrun saying he's not so sure that's going to happen. Now, could they do a complicated, creative type deal like they did with Chris Tanev? That's a possibility, and that's kind of what I was leaning towards, thinking it was a more likely scenario, that they get him the bigger money, but they just figure out a way that it's not so impactful on the cap for the next couple of years. But anyways, LeBron's just not completely sold on Tavares giving a big discount, and that's not a foregone conclusion that he comes back. Friedman had said when it comes to Tavares, I think he still would say that his gut would say most likely going back to Toronto, but he says if he doesn't, a team to watch he thinks might be the Ducks. Now the Ducks are going to be one of the teams in on Marner too, so I don't know if there's any chance to go after them both, but they have a ton of cap space, like a ton, and they just picked up Chris Kreider, but they're not done. All the NHL insiders are saying that the Ducks are going to be going after pretty much all the big names. Now, they don't expect to get them all, but they're going to be having a ton of conversations, and they definitely want to try to land a couple of more, make a few more big moves. So it's hard to say when it's all said and done, how many different moves they end up doing, but they're definitely going to be trying and going after some of these big names. So Friedman wonders about the Ducks if Tavares can't reach a deal with the Leafs. Considering all the young guys they have there, you mentioned they brought in 3 veterans like Kreider, Tavares, and Marner, and you throw in all those young guys like McTavish and Carlson and Zegras and Terry and Cutter Gauthier and all that. Like, it would make for quite a deep group. Hard to say how it would all work out, but certainly an interesting scenario to think about there. So I guess I still think Tavares most likely stays, but on the odd chance he doesn't, that's something that's out there in the rumor mill, you could say. Also talk as well from Pierre LeBrun that the Penguins are getting a lot of calls on Brian Rust. Again, I'm not completely sold that they move Rust. Of course, they just keep taking away from Crosby's favorite people, right? And keep trading them out. I mean, at some point, you got to wonder if Dubas is trying to make it so that he doesn't want to stay. There's a lot of speculation that this is going to be the last year in Pittsburgh for Malkin. So obviously he's probably done after this year. That'll leave Crosby and Letang if they both stick around. There's some speculation that Letang is more willing to take a trade than Crosby would be. But again, it sounds like if Letang was going to be traded, he was mostly interested, if they were willing to do it, to go to Montreal where he's from. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure Kent Hughes was his agent when he was before he became a GM. So I think there's a personal connection there as well. But I know Montreal would have a real tough time doing that. I'm not really sure it makes sense for them either. But anyways, Crosby and Letang probably both stick around in Pittsburgh, is my guess. I don't think there's anything there, but they keep taking away all of their kind of favorite people to play with, and Brian Rust would be another one of those names. So I'm not sure what to make of that, but I guess they're getting a lot of interest. If Dubas gets an offer that he feels he has to make, maybe Russ is another one on the move, so certainly keep an eye out for him over the next few weeks here as well. The Los Angeles Kings are another team to watch. Like I said, they're expected to be a big player for Mitch Marner, and they do have a couple of players that have been mentioned by insiders. I know Elliot Friedman had made mention of it, and a few others. There's some names to watch for them that they could move out in order to create some space, as well as some roster construction here. And one of them might be Trevor Moore. Trevor Moore is a player that's getting closer to the end of his contract. If they think they're going to be able to land Marner, he is a logical cap casualty, if you want to call it that. So he could be a middle six winger that might be on the move. Jordan Spence is another name to watch, and I've seen reports today suggesting that he's been linked to the Ottawa Senators. Now, he would make sense for Ottawa. Now, Ottawa has been reportedly in the market for some more depth in the right side of their defense. In case you don't know, Nick Jensen, of course, came over to the Sens this year in a trade from the Capitals for Chychrun. Played a big role in the top four right shot D, partnered with Thomas Chabot, had a real nice year. The second half of the season, though, he did encounter an injury, and he ended up to have a pretty big surgery this offseason on his hip. And they're not quite certain if he's going to be ready to go at the start of the year, so there's some uncertainty over his health and if he may miss time at the start of the season. So they've got, obviously, Artem Zub, and you've got Nicholas Matenpalo, who they re-signed, but it kind of leaves their right side of their decor a little weakened without him there. Of course, they do have their first-round pick from last year, Carter Yakimchuk, who might be an option to make the team. They may feel like he needs more time to develop. You don't want to put too much on the youngster. So Jordan Spence's name in LA is out there. There's belief that the Kings are not going to keep him and Brent Clark both, and that they kind of favor Clark being a higher ceiling. So Spence is available. I believe he needs a new contract as well, and it wouldn't be super expensive. So to me, he's a younger right shot D. He's got some decent metrics from last year. And he's not going to be expensive, and he might be a better fit for them on a longer-term basis anyways, given that Jensen's only under contract for one more year. We don't know how the health situation is going to be long-term. Like it might make sense if they can find a right shot D like him via trade. It makes a ton of sense, and it wouldn't be super costly like, getting Aaron Ekblad, for example, or somebody like that. So we'll see what happens in Ottawa, but they are linked to Jordan Spence right now. Speaking of Ekblad, there is some reports from Dave Pagnotta and a few other reporters on the Panthers situation. There's now, I guess, when it comes to, there's mixed feelings out there. Some think that it's a slam dunk that Sam Bennett resigns and stays in Florida, and there's some that are saying, hold on, maybe it happens, but they haven't talked at all because they're too busy in the Stanley Cup final. So we'll see, but all in all, the general consensus is that Bennett likely stays. Aaron Ekblad, though, his future seems to be a little bit less certain. There's been some reports that for him to stay in Florida, that they're going to probably want him to take a bigger discount than he might be willing to do. Last year, like I said, there were some reports that Ekblad, who was still had a year left on his contract, there was concerns he might be traded last summer as a cap casualty type of cost-cutting move. Didn't end up happening. They found other ways to get around it and keep him. And then, obviously now, they're almost done the season, a couple wins away from another Stanley Cup. Either way, his contract's now up. But you got Ekblad, you got Bennett, you got Marchand, and it was believed that there was a good chance before that between Ekblad and Bennett, they could probably both stay. And it's still possible that could get worked out. But for Ekblad to stay, he's definitely going to have to take a discount on his current contract. And the word is that the discount the Panthers want him to take is more than he was hoping for and might be more than he's willing to do. One team that he's been linked to, a couple of teams, one I would say is a combination of Carolina and Detroit. Again, hard to say for sure, but in Carolina, there was word today that Dmitry Orlov is not expected to return. Brent Burns is a question mark as well. If they could get a guy like Ekblad who's younger and more physical, maybe they go that route instead. So they're definitely interested if he makes it there. And like I said, to some degree, there'll be other teams too, but I've seen Toronto's name linked to Ekblad, but again, that would only be if they make other moves. To me, I don't know that it makes sense for them to bring in Ekblad unless they're moving Carlo. Looking at how their decor is structured, I mean, he's not going to be a third pair of guys. So, to me, I just don't know that makes perfect sense for them. But we'll see. See what happens, because right now they've got Tanev, they've got Carlo. You've got some other guys that are going to have to play their offside. Whether it be McCabe or Ekman Larson, or they've got more than enough defensemen there. I don't know that they can bring in a guy like Ekblad without moving out a guy like I said, you're probably moving out Brandon Carlo, who you just got from Boston, to give up a big price for, and you may not be able to recoup that. So that, to me, that doesn't make the most sense, but we'll see what happens. But either way, it's not a given that Ekblad ends up staying with the Panthers, but we'll see what happens. Let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.